Christina Barton watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barton. Today, we're going to be talking about the interesting question: what do Democrats have against white people? And this title because, and that won't be the only thing, but I saw this interesting survey about affirmative action and how so many Democrats support it, um, and how that number dramatically drops once they learn that it impacts Asians. But if it's okay about discriminating against white people, they feel that's fine. I guess it's like, but it negatively impacts Asians. They're like, oh, okay, maybe that's not a great way to go about all this stuff. But even still, it's too high. So we'll talk about that interesting survey. Also, some pandering that Joe Biden is doing to black voters, and things look really bleak on the Biden team, man, as far as different polling that's coming out. I don't know if what to make of all of it. Maybe there's a grain of truth in it. Do I think there's going to be big, beautiful black wave for Trump? History doesn't make me tend to think that, but they're working on it certainly, and things look bad for Joe. But he's doing some mighty powerful pandering, and also a very weird tweet that his administration put out about menstruation. So sorry for the gentlemen who watching are gross out, but more, I think it's more disturbing how the Biden administration clearly doesn't have much respect for women. But anyway, before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost to stream and run my website, all that stuff, so you guys can support. I do appreciate it. Appreciate you guys for watching on Facebook. You guys can send stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can send super chats. But the best way to support is to go directly to the website. And there's also different merch you guys can check out on the site as well, like mugs and t-shirts and so on. You guys can also check out some of my books that are available on Amazon in the link descriptions. There should be in the descriptions there should be a link that should take you to Amazon where you can see some of my books and other things like that. But you can also go to the website, and there's a banner on the merchandise page that'll take you to my book website. So I have 18 altogether, and I encourage you guys to check out much of my writing. Most of it is fiction, but I do have some nonfiction that you guys, I'm sure, will be interested in. So anyway, I saw this interesting article that Chris Rufo shared, and he shared this interesting figure and then linked the article. And the article was about affirmative action and how the left is like, oh, it's, this is the right that's pushing this, but there was some data, prior to like the decision to the Supreme Court that some folks kind of felt uncomfortable with affirmative action. And it's interesting how people's attitudes, change in regard to affirmative action once you tell them that another minority that is hurt by it. So in this report, non-black Democrats oppose affirmative action that harms Asians, but not white students. Okay. So if it's white are harmed, 63.4% were okay with it. And then if you told them that it harms Asians, it drops a little bit before 40%. So it's like, certain all minorities, okay. Oh shoot, we gotta, maybe it's not so great. Maybe it's not so great. Now I still think that's a little high. At least it's less than 50% at that point. But it's interesting how there's the big drop. Yeah, it harms people having these different, advantages or based on race. And you can say in the past, people had, and I know plenty of people, including, family who was close to me, who, would be pretty conservative. And then they would have this belief like, no, people needed affirmative action. You don't know, understand how it was back then, et cetera, et cetera. But when it does create these sort of disparities, or it pushes maybe other people, keeping people who maybe should have a chance to get in from getting out, it makes them getting into college, and it makes it harder for them. It's not really fair. It's not really fair. Now, I think merit-based education, people who qualify, who are best for the job, best for the opportunity, whatever, is the best way to go. I do want to caution people, though, that the you don't always know the answer to who's the best one for the job just based off of metrics of testing or other stuff like that. You have to find a way to sort of assess, and this is something the Harvard professor, I can't think of his name, but we talked about him a couple months ago. Um, he got A lot of people were angry at him because he did a study about police brutality, and he's actually discovered, after doing his data like twice, because he didn't think, he was confused by the results the first time, so he fired everybody and tried it again, and found out that police officers are less likely to actually engage in lethal force against black people. And so folks are really mad about that. And he had another portion that was something that they did like. So like, okay, well, that part is true, but you got to keep this other part hidden. And he's like, okay, okay, but why do you just, the data is the data, and I'm not going to just suppress it because you don't like it. So it was a big hoopla. But he was having a conversation with Barry Weiss with the Free Press about affirmative action, not affirmative action, but like DEI and other stuff like that. And something that he just pointed out is there's other ways to look at potential and talent, and we have to find out what's the best way to find those people, because you're going to be missing out on a lot of folks who just aren't, bl- jumping off the page like this person is going to go the distance all the way, and we have to find a way to find these people and nurture them so we can get the best out of society. So I don't have all the answers on how to do that, but at the very least, people um shouldn't be discriminated against within their own racial structure in a way that Asians um, have found that to be the case for them. So it is interesting that there are folks Democrats, who were okay with white people being harmed by affirmative action, but they changed their tune as soon as they found out that it was hurting Asians. And again, it's not even um it's still too high because you're just below 40%. And for anyone who might be curious what that source is, it was a survey, a 2022 cooperative election survey. That's the source of the actual survey, where that data is coming in. You can see that Republicans don't like it, very low percentage for them. But it's just very fascinating. And my question is like, why so much animosity toward white people? And you could say, oh, ancestors did this, white people, white privilege, historically US, etc., etc. But it's it's too much, I think. It's very weird how much self-hatred that you'll just kind of observe. There's one person who has a pretty big following, and she talked about why she's no longer a Democrat. And she's been conservative for a few years now. I guess she had a pretty big TikTok account. I think she does pretty well on YouTube. But one of her confessions was she just got kind of sick of pretending that she thought all the white people were racist. Like that was sort of a penance that everyone had to pay. Like, I'm guilty for my white privilege, and you can't actually say that you're not racist. You have to think that everything is racist and be anti-racist. It's not enough to just not be racist. You have to be anti-racist. And apologize for your privilege. And if you say that you don't have any, that's just because haven't realized it. And if you don't think that you're actually racist, then that's because you haven't realized it. You have to look at the microaggressions and all kinds of stuff. And it's funny to me when people say that Republicans are so racist, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, first of all, there's racist people in both parties. And, people can, I don't know, inflict microaggressions upon you, or people can be extraordinarily racist, I don't know, literally harm you. I think that's way on the rarer side, like physically, or even people who would go the distance to try to mess you up professionally and other stuff like that. I think most people just kind of, you cannot like black people, but as long as you kind of keep that to yourself, you can go home and be a jerk if you want. Like, just at least be professional and cordial. And I'm probably not going to think about you other than pray for your salvation. Anyway, so just have a polite society at the very least, and we can be cordial and work for that dollar or whatever. But you can't always control you can't control what's in people's hearts. You can have conversations to try to change their minds, and maybe they will themselves change what's in their hearts. But it it is what it is. But Democrats were making all their people basically say, no, we're all racist and we have to all read White Fragility and make this white woman who wrote it extraordinarily rich, right? So that was going on in 2020. Everybody had to say they had white privilege and they were racist and they just need to shut up and affirm, et cetera, et cetera. So when people say that it's the Republicans that are racist, I'm like, no, your side like already admitted that all you guys are racist, right? You guys made it a huge thing. I didn't forget. And you say, well, no, all the white people are racist. Okay, well, you have to prove that, but you admitted it. You admitted that you were racist. So the Republicans are saying they're not, and y'all already said that y'all were. So we're gonna stack who is racist and who's not racist. It's obviously you guys. And then you guys push things like critical race theory. And critical race theory, for example, we talked about this quite a bit. I might have let's see if I have a bit of it saved in here. I don't know if it might be really small, so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to read it, but I think I might have some pages from critical race theory and introduction. Maybe I got a couple things in here. I know I have something from the Democrat Party platform. So this is in the Democrat Party platform under this is their current platform right now. To achieve racial justice, the Democrats are committed to standing up to to racism and bigotry in our laws, in our culture, in our politics, in our society, and recognize that race neutral policies are not sufficient to rectify race based disparities. So, this is the Democrat Party platform, and they're telling you that we don't believe it's enough to treat everyone the same in the law or in policies. We have to make it so things are not equal. And that's the only way to make things equal. And I don't even think they really want things to be equal, but that's in their platform. It's in their platform to treat people differently based on their race. It's literally there, right? And so remember when they were really pushing CRT? That's not the page. Here's that's a page about them rejecting color blindness. The other page was about them rejecting like liberalism. Trying to see if there's something in here that I want to really draw attention to. but they're pushing critical race theory, and they super reject the idea of like seeing everybody kind of the same. Like they want us to completely be divided, I would say, of race all the time. but I guess I don't have the pages in here, but in critical race theory and introduction, it talks about that racism is just kind of ordinary in America. Like Obama said that it's in the DNA or whatever, America's DNA. And white people are just racist. And even if they do something that seems like it's not racist, they're still at the same time doing it because it's somehow benefiting them. And it's not because they're not racist and they want to stop racism. So that's the thing that they were pushing nonstop. Joy Reid and all these folks. And they would defend, they didn't know what it was. Really, they just knew Republicans didn't like it, so they had to stand for it. So they kept pushing CRT and all of this racist stuff that, makes minorities, it infantilizes the minorities, and it makes the white people as the villains, the perpetual villains who always be the villains, because even if they do something right to correct the course of history, they are still bad people who are doing it to help themselves rather than actually doing a virtuous thing. So, yeah, when people say that Democrats are the ones who are the good guys, or, are the ones who aren't racist, and it's the terrible Republicans who are racist, it doesn't really make any sense, because again, they're the ones who push for racial policies to keep us divided on racial lines, to be obsessed with race, to treat people differently based on race. But they think treating people based on race is a moral good, that it will result in the world that they think will be better. The truth is that they use race to push, different Marxist sort of ideas, which I've gone through this a lot, so I'm just going to mention it really quickly. Go look if you haven't seen it. And I've mentioned a lot, and you've watched my show a lot. I'm probably going to mention that African American History Museum infographic about whiteness in America. There was a big conversation about whiteness in America and what we have to do to fight it. When people start to define whiteness, it just seems like a lot of normal, sensible things. Like, you know, being attracted to someone with a good job, linear critical thinking, being on time, being optimistic, believing that intent matters in the law, property rights, things that are very normal. You guys caught I said property rights, right? So things that just are kind of normal are things that they relate to whiteness. And the reasoning, because you might say, well, there's black people obviously believe in working hard and being attracted to people with money and other things, just seem like common sense things. But they would say that they're still black, but they're just impacted by a culture of whiteness. So you associate some normal things with whiteness, and then all of a sudden you learn that those things are bad, and they need to be torn down so they can build up their silly little Marxist utopia. So it's interesting how much they've trained their constituency to feel this way, to push all these racial divisive lines to the point where they just don't, a lot of white folks don't like themselves. It's really cringy when I hear a lot of white Democrats just talk about white people this, white people that, and not in a funny, racial joke like, oh, I seasoned my chicken with water and it was too spicy. Not stuff like that. I mean, like, really, like, oh, white people, we're so terrible. We're so this, we're so that, we're so that. And I feel bad and all that. And it's just weird. It's very strange, and it makes me uncomfortable. But this was really interesting. I'm not surprised by this though. That they're totally okay. Majority of them are fine with it hurting white people. And then they are like, oh, Asians, we have to kind of change our mind about. And that's why so many people had to focus on the talking point of it hurts Asians, affirmative action. So I don't know specifically why white people would still feel like You know, they'd have to stomp for that. I can understand black Democrats or just black people in general because they got something to gain from it, right? Like I had a conversation with someone one time, and they didn't know that affirmative action hurts like Asians, and so I explained that, and they said, "Well, if it was my child, I would want them to have an advantage." And I said, "That's because you're black. But what if your child wasn't black?" So anyway, uh, I think I like this. Let me retweet it. So if you guys want to read this report, you guys can go ahead and look at it yourselves. But it's just a funny infographic with the data on there. Um, Now it's funny that I don't know. They appeal. Obviously, minority means it's a smaller population size, but they need them so bad. They want them so bad, and how minorities feel controls, or how you think they should feel, or how you think they're treated, impacts so much of the psyche of their white voters too. And so Joe Biden isn't apparently doing well enough, because when you start possibly dipping into double digits as a Republican with the black vote, if things could go very badly for you, or likely to go very badly for you in the general election. So they're out there pandering. They're out there really trying to appeal to, you know, black voters, because Biden needs them to vote uniformly for him. As a matter of fact, Joe Biden does not run his Twitter, but perhaps the press secretary wrote this, or one of her interns. But Joe Biden tweeted, his account at least tweeted, "Folks, if anyone is wondering whether your vote matters, remember this: because black Americans voted, I am president. Kamala Harris is historic vice president, and Donald Trump is a loser." Why you gotta make me feel bad, Joe? Why you gotta blame that on all the black people? So I replied with that tweet there. So you know they want people to know that they're really really important, and that's why Joe Biden will go out there and talk to black voters and lie to their face about him being involved in the civil rights movement, which has been debunked time and time and time again. He apologized in the past after he got caught for lying about that stuff. And so there's video of old Joe Biden talking about how he didn't actually march in the civil rights movement. And people are comparing that to statements he's making today. Now, he's been lying about that stuff for a very long time. He lied about it when he ran in 2020, but he's still lying about it today. He lied about it while he was vice president. So I think that's pretty disrespectful, to lie about something like that. He lies about a lot of things, but I think if you're trying to really appeal to black voters and you lie about something that's so important like the civil rights movement, it- you know, not everybody was involved in all that stuff. You could just try being a good president today, and maybe that would just be enough. Now, he's not a good president, so that sucks for him, but you don't have to lie. Lying is like it's just a total sign of disrespect. To me, it is anyway. I can't stand when people lie. People can be wrong, but he's not wrong. He's lying. So another thing that Joe Biden did, he said, well, alleged that if you were black during January 6th, I guess that Trump would have did something worse to you.
What do you think he would have done on January 6th if black Americans had stormed it? Think about this. What do you think would have happened if black Americans had stormed the Capitol? I don't think he'd be talking about pardons. It's the same guy who wanted to tear gas you as you peacefully protested George Floyd's murder. The same guy who still calls the Central Park Five.
Oh, okay, cut off there. Um Yeah, so Ben Shapiro was talking about this earlier. He's like, I know somebody black who got arrested who was there on that day. I don't know how many black people were there at the Capitol. I do know black people who were there like at the rally with Trump and had a grand old time talking to people who loved the president, who loved the job that he did, and was concerned about the country, the state of the country, and where it would be going. I know some really good people who went there. Not and again, not to the Capitol. I mean, I do know people who went to the Capitol, but I just people who went there to hear the president speak and didn't go march. Yeah, I know people who were there and who were black. And what's dumb about Joe Biden saying that? What do you think Trump would have did to the black people? The to what would Trump have done to black people who were there to support him in being the president? Think of this. Just think about it, Joe. Why? Why would Trump have ordered, I don't know, the Capitol Police or anyone to treat them, to tear gas them, to do anything, particularly if they were black? Because if they were there, they'd be Trump supporters, would they not be, Joe? So we're just going full on. It only matters your skin color, not the your actions or your content of your character or your intentions or anything. All that matters is if someone is black. That's all you can see, and that's how you think everyone else sees. It's just so insulting to people's intelligence, and unfortunately, people have low. Some people do have low intelligence and not, and they go along with it and they don't think too much about it themselves. But this is really gross. It's really disgusting. It's really disgusting. And everyone was not peacefully protesting with the George Floyd riots. People were not peacefully protesting. Some people were. There were a lot of rallies. I know people who peacefully protested at rallies, BLM rallies. Excuse me. But the George Floyd ones weren't the only ones that happened. There were a couple of different cases. It seemed like if anything was set off a little bit, even in cases where the cops were like obviously like in the right or mostly in the right just from footage or whatever, people came out to protest. And people came out to riot and all kinds of different stuff. It just became a thing throughout the year. And extended probably beyond the year, but it was awful. And I saw a lot of the footage and thank God for uh amateur journalists, independent journalists going out there filming stuff, posting stuff online because that's where I saw a lot of stuff like Twitter, to be frank. A couple things maybe on Facebook. That kind of stuff doesn't survive on Twitter. I mean on TikTok. So even with the suppressing of stuff on Twitter at the time, that's how we saw a lot of stuff. And if not for independent journalists filming stuff all the time, I don't know if Kyle Rittenhouse would have gotten off. But it was crazy he had to go through that whole trial because there's plenty of evidence at the time of the shooting that it was a self-defense issue. But they wanted him to rot. They wanted to make an example out of him. And I don't know if Joe Biden means the tear gas in general or if he's specifically talking about the incident where there was a big thing about, oh, Trump tear gassed protesters so he could have a photo op, which that was eventually debunked. But that went on for a while, people believing that. So I don't know specifically what he's talking about, but there's plenty of people who were rioters and not just peaceful protesters. Just stop. Just stop. We live. It's so crazy. We lived through it. We lived through it. We saw it. I remember that kind of stuff didn't really break out too much in Michigan. Our cops were not having it. But I remember one night there were protesters and they were getting kind of close. And so I'm just like watching online to see different reports of like, were they going to come somewhere near the vicinity of my area and would we be okay? Like what would these crazy people try to do that they did in other places? And it wasn't like everyone was caught up just in the moment of they were so angry we have to do all this stuff. You know, there was one incident, and I think it was in Atlanta, where the mob like came to a Waffle House. And they're like, "No, not the Waffle House. We got to keep going. Leave the Waffle House alone." So that was just something that the protesters just, came to themselves all of a sudden, was like, "We got to leave the Waffle House alone." They're like, "This is our hood spot. We can go burn something else, but not the Waffle House." You know. Um okay. Okay. But his vice president, Kamala Harris, at the time, of course, she wasn't vice president, but was elevating a fund to bail out protesters and put them back out on the streets. There wasn't really repercussions for people who did kind of crazy stuff during that time. And people knew about it and people stood up for them. And if you complained about, hey, they're destroying property, they shouldn't be doing that. They shouldn't be burning stuff. They certainly shouldn't be stealing stuff. And they would say, well, you care about things more than you care about Black lives. What? How about I care about evil? Okay? If you murder someone, that's obviously wrong. Obviously wrong. Stealing things is also wrong. And one I will say is worse. Right? But stealing is also bad. And if you do the another this bad thing over here that didn't even happen to you, doesn't justify you going and stealing people's stuff. Even if you're black. Even if you're black, still doesn't justify it. And then I know we kind of moved on from the subject, but about the Democrats and the white people, but it's crazy though to me how if you don't think the correct thing, that they feel like they have permission to talk to minorities any kind of way. Like if they're on their side, they have to uplift them and they're so great, etc. Blah blah blah. But if you don't agree, all of a sudden it's, oh, you don't know what's best for you, etc., etc., etc. And then they want to tell you off. But when you think like them, that's when they want to affirm you. That's when they can shut up and be quiet and just elevate you. When you're just a mouthpiece for them. When you actually use your own mind and you speak from the heart and you say things that maybe they don't like, that's when it's shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. You ain't black. Go sit down. You're a pick me. You're an Uncle Tom. That's when that kind of stuff comes out, when you're just not a bullhorn for them and their ideas. So it's interesting. They don't like themselves and they like the black person and the Hispanic and the Asian, so on. They like those folks unless they don't think like them. And then you're defective. Then you're brainwashed. It's so freaking bizarre. It's so bizarre. Anyway. I I really hope that people wake up, man. One of Biden's people was talking about how Biden has done all this stuff for black people. He's like, well, we packed the Supreme Court with black people. I'm like, there's 2 black people on there. I wouldn't exactly call that packing, but and I'm like, what does that have to do with the price of groceries? What does that have to do with people's wages? What does that have to do with anything? Is this supposed to solve the problem because you put Ketanji Brown Jackson on the Supreme Court? I don't even want her to be there. I don't like her rulings. I don't like her reasoning. I don't like. Sorry. She does nothing for me. I don't care what color she is. And I know there's a lot of people excited about there being another black face up there. Well, that particular blackface. They don't like Clarence Thomas's blackface, right? Is his actual, not that he's doing blackface, but his actual blackface. But they don't like that he's there. They just like the black person who they like because she has their values and their opinions. So she's cool. And we're all supposed to be so happy, like clapping seals, because he appointed someone to the Supreme Court. Well, again, what is that? What is that? It's a negative as far as I'm concerned. But it has. What about the price of groceries? What about the price of gas? What about your moral cowardice when it comes to events on the world stage? Your incompetence that you make America look frail and weak and confused, and like our allies don't really have an ally that can be trusted when things are tough. Then you give the impression that if you go overseas, good luck if something goes wrong because you're probably not going to come back. Biden's just kind of like, how would we get you back? He said that in like a couple different interviews, like, what would we do? What do you expect us to do? I don't know, not give up. Not to project weakness, certainly. So what did, and then say, well, we ended childhood poverty. Really? That's news to everybody. I know that's something that people say. That's not how people live their life. I talked about how I did a video. I got almost 3 million views on TikTok. And Joe Biden said something along the lines of people have money to spend. And he tried to blame, people's real problems on greedflation or whatever. Like, this is just a greedy companies, and didn't want to take any accountability for, how much money they printed, how much money they spent, etc. Didn't want to take any accountability for that. So they just blame the corporations. But people were angry because they're like, we don't have money. What are you talking about? We don't have money. And people saying, I have to pick between food and medicine. And I make sure my kids eat, but that doesn't mean I always will. Like, I got something for lunch, or I don't know how I'm going to make it through the rest of the week. Just a ton of comments like that. People saying stuff like, I felt guilty because I bought myself some clothes, even though I really, really need them. Just comment after comment after comment. And we went through some of them on the show. But you just can't be like, oh, but Ketanji Brown Jackson's on the Supreme Court. We ended poverty. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Like, oh, well, we forgave student loans. What? That ain't got nothing to do with me, besides the fact that I'm paying for someone's loan who I, may not think they deserve that. Maybe they didn't. Depends what they got. Well, they took out their contract, the agreement or whatever. So if they failed to pay it back, that's, their issue. Not saying that we can't have compassion sometimes, but why should people be excited about that if they're the ones who have to pay? Maybe they didn't go to college, or maybe they already paid off their loans. And we're just supposed to be excited about that. Well, oil, we're not, it's not as high as it used to be, but it's still high. I can't believe how high it got. And now you're excited because it's not $6. Okay. Okay. They gotta stop pretending like, if Joe Biden had the approach of, there's more to do because we're not quite there, we need more time. They could say, Trump was just so bad for the economy and he did so many things that were wrong, and inflation was high because he spent a lot of money, or he did whatever. I mean, that opens the door that they spent a lot of money, but why did they say stuff all the time and kind of ignore the reality of the situation? So they could blame a lot of stuff on Trump and say, we had this recession and now we have to bounce back, but it's taken longer than we thought it would, or we just have to, we're in this together. Just go this empathetic route that they claim that he takes. to be that empathy and chief guy and look people in the eye and say, I know you're hurting. I know you are. And we could be doing better and we are going to do better. But we've come so far. Like, he could say that. I don't believe that. But he could say we've come so far, but we have a ways to go. So let's not go backwards. But how hard is that kind of messaging? Not to be like, oh no, they could afford it. They don't know what they're talking about. The economy's better than they think. Even if that were true, people don't want to accept that. People aren't going to accept the reality that's contrary to how they are living, to what they see with their eyes. When things are so hard for them and their families, they're not just going to take you saying they got the money. It doesn't work like that. This is the dumbest campaign. This is the dumbest campaign. And he will be so lucky if he does manage to eke out a win with everything that they've thrown at Trump, including this crazy case where Trump did not commit a crime, but there's like multiple choice answers to because it's kind of hard to explain, but some falsifying business records, but they needed to be tied to some kind of felony and some kind of crime. So the question is, what kind of crime did he commit? And they don't really know, but they're giving like multiple choice answers. Like, well, you guys don't have to be unanimous on a agreement for a particular crime, but if like 4 of you agree here and 4 of you agree on this one, or 4 of you agree on that one, as long as you all agree that he did something that we can maybe relate back to this thing, then he's gonna be guilty, I guess. So everyone thinks that he can get it overturned. I don't know if he's going to be convicted or not. I hope he's not convicted, especially just because I don't want to be annoyed by all this continuing going forward. I just, would like it to be over. So I don't know. Maybe that's, I don't know, kind of a selfish reason, but like let's just move on. It's a crazy thing that's happening. But really there's no crime. And it is political prosecution. I don't know if the phrasing of, oh, this person is a felon, you're going to vote for the felon. I don't know how much it's going to sway people. According to polling right now, it doesn't look like this whole trial is helping Joe Biden at all. When there's actually a conviction, I don't know if that's going to change people's perceptions. There was someone in my comments yesterday talking about how Donald Trump was found liable of sexual assault. I'm like, what does that even mean? Did he commit the crime? Like, you're talking about the cuckoo lady who thinks that rape is sexy? That woman? And come on, guys. If you want to see something creepy and weird, we could go to Ashley Biden's diary. You want to play these games? Someone believes, I saw a conversation talking about the Trump trial, and there are people who believe, and this isn't the first time I saw this, so that's why I saved this book and bookmarked it. There we go. Someone believes that the reason why all this is a crime is because Trump was trying to influence the election. So John Ziegler, who is a conservative but does not like Trump at all, he said it is well known that no authentic conservative commentator loathes Donald Trump, for whom I have never voted more than I do, and yet the insanity of this situation is so extreme and an affront to basic due process so egregious that we have somehow reached the point where I am now on pins and needles rooting against Trump getting convicted. How the heck did we fall so far so fast to this pathetic place? And I watched his segment on Newsmax, I think it was. No, it was News Nation, about his explanation of the due process situation. And his explanation was that there's all these polls that if Trump is convicted, that he will um tank in the polls. Basically, he will tank in his election will basically be over. Now, will that be the case? Will it not be the case? Who knows? But if you're a juror and you don't like Trump and you don't want him to be the president, and you know if he gets convicted that he will probably not be president, that's very powerful incentive to obviously convict this man. So he's concerned about him getting any kind of real due process. There's this trial going on, which he shouldn't even be on trial for all this. But is he actually getting a fair day in court? From all the reports and other stuff, it doesn't really seem like it. But so anyway, there's this back and forth with this guy, and he said it was a grand jury that found there was such sufficient evidence to indict Trump. He paid off the porn star so that the affair wouldn't come out and hurt his chances of being elected. That is the only reason he is guilty. So Ziegler just did the laughing, crying faces. And but people continue going back and forth. And someone said, every campaign suppresses stories and pushes other stories. There is nothing illegal about bleep. That is what the media does 24/7. And that's true. People suppress stories all the time. Hunter Biden laptop story was suppressed. I can give you examples about Joe Biden suppressing information. And for example, before I read that next tweet, which is crazy, Joe Biden, when there was a story about Tara Reid, who accused Joe Biden of sexually assaulting her, she said that information about a report on it was among his things at some kind of like library or whatever that's sealed, and it's supposed to be unsealed for the public after a certain amount of time when you're out of office. But you know, Joe Biden was he left the private life, was going back to public life. So you know, that stuff was going to be resealed or whatever. So he was on an interview with Morning Joe, and Mika was doing an interview, and she said, okay, why don't you just release those documents? If there's no there, why don't you just, you know, allow people to go see the evidence or see that there's no evidence? Joe Biden's answer was very interesting. He said that he had different papers and speeches and all kinds of different things that would be, quote, cannon fodder in a campaign. So this man is like, no, I'm not going to give you evidence about whether or not I've committed this sexual assault against this woman, because if you looked at where it's at, there'd be a ton of stuff that if you looked at it, that would probably make people not vote for me. And he said that on TV. And I'm just kind of looking around at the rest of the country. I'm like, did y'all hear that? This man is telling you that there are all these legitimate reasons. We'd probably find that his life and speeches and a bunch of stuff that he said is going to be cannon fodder in a campaign. And he doesn't want people to be aware of it because obviously he wants to win. I appreciate the honesty. It's very strange when he decides to be honest. Very strange. But it seems like a lot of people didn't really catch that. So there's an instance with Joe Biden, you know, really kind of trying to suppress something. But you know, that's him not going the distance to provide information so people can have, you know, all the information that they needed. But there was the Hunter Biden laptop story that was suppressed by social media and so on. But of course, the most blatant, horrible thing that could come up, I guess, with there could be other examples, but Joe Biden being on the debate stage, and when Trump mentions the Hunter Biden laptop, Joe Biden, who knows that laptop belongs to his crackhead son, okay, and he goes along with, well, there are all these intelligence agencies or former intelligence people said that this, you know, looks like Russian propaganda. Oh, the letter that I'm sure that you got people to coordinate and make for your behalf, Joe. So you rely on a foreign power, a nuclear power, and basically say that they interfered with our election. When the truth is that you had a crackhead son who left his laptop behind, who had a lot of incriminating stuff on it, and you could have just owned it. So A lot of people suppress, a lot of people lie, but people literally believe that it is a crime. This is what the person said. What makes this illegal is that this was done so the knowledge of the affair wouldn't hurt his election. The real crime was not the affair, but the cover up so the voters could not make an informed choice. He interfered with our ability to make that informed choice. This person literally believes it is a crime for politicians to not give you all the information so they will have a better chance of winning. So if Donald Trump goes to jail, or I don't know how they'd handle that because he needs like Secret Service and a bunch of other stuff. So it would be a mess. It would be a mess. But if Donald Trump gets convicted, people are not going to be able to explain to you a real crime that he committed because there's really no real crime that he committed. But they're going to feel justified telling you that he committed a crime because he had his fixer pay off a porn star so we would not know about it. So it would help his chances of being elected president. Do you know how crazy that is? Do you know how bonkers that is? How many politicians would be in jail or candidates for what? Not disclosing all the information, did not give you true informed consent. It's insane. It's insane. Sleeping with a porn star is gross. He shouldn't have done it. And Trump obviously shouldn't have did it. Like he said Mother Teresa couldn't beat these charges and he is being treated unfairly. Sometimes he whines too much though because Mother Teresa wouldn't have slept with a porn star. You made what is done in darkness comes to light. What is done in darkness comes to light. So if you're out there and you're, I don't know, a rash person and you're thinking about making some mistakes, don't. Don't. Because one day it might come back to bite you. So he's responsible for that. But as far as paying it off and the stuff that they're accusing him of, it's unseemly behavior. Certainly not what I would like for a president to have done or be a part of. But is there something criminal there? No. No. But this person literally thinks it's a crime because he covered it up so voters could not make an informed choice. And if that's the case, how many Democrats, including Joe Biden, who this person will probably vote for, should be thrown not just in the jail, under the jail, all the way. All the way under the jail. So we'll see. We'll have to see. I don't think there's been an update in a while as far as the trial. I would assume they're about to go home. I don't know. I haven't seen any like alerts, but I've been talking to you guys for a while, so you can let me know. um TJ Ducklow said the other day too, and he's working for Biden and Kamala Harris, which that name he worked for them before, but then he did something to a reporter that was pretty awful. I don't know if it was just how he talked to her, harassed her verbally or whatever, but he ended up getting let go and then he got hired back with the Biden campaign. But the president just spoke to approximately 1,000 mostly black voters in Philly about the massive stakes in this election, and MSNBC and CNN and others did not show it. Instead, more coverage about the trial that impacts one person, Trump. Then they'll ask, why isn't your message getting out? We talked a little bit about this yesterday, how the Biden campaign is complaining about and whining about how they don't have more attention. And it's kind of a big deal when the former president is being tried. And Joe Biden is the president. And if he wants media attention, including interviews and other stuff, he could just be available for the media, etc. I guarantee you, we will talk about his press conferences and interviews that are not softball mush if you really wanted him to get out there. But him being in front of a bunch of voters and lying to their faces, which we still talk about. But yeah, people care about the Trump stuff. People always care about the Trump stuff. You can't, and the more people don't focus on Biden, it's probably a good thing. So yeah, so we talked yesterday about how the Biden campaign sent Biden surrogates and people from the campaign to the trial to have a press conference outside of like the courthouse, which was insane because it just makes them look like obviously they are benefiting from the prosecution of the political opponent and like they have hands in it. But they're so dumb. But anyway, Nate Silver, who was with 538, but then they let him go. I think that was a company he actually started, but he's a pollster. I'm sorry, but I'm going to come at this one more time. Democrats spend every available moment complaining that the media doesn't cover Trump's misdeeds enough, and now there's an actual criminal trial, and the Biden campaign is complaining that he's being covered too much. Yes, it's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Anyway, last thing I want to mention, well, there's two things I want to mention before I let you guys go. The U.S. Department of Labor had tweeted this out. Menstruation affects half the U.S. workforce, but talking about it at work can be taboo. For Menstruation Hygiene Day, here are 5 easy actions employers can take to help menstruators thrive at work. Now, why'd you call us menstruators? I have never been called that. I have never called another woman that. But we know why. Because you think there are some men who can menstruate. And you're crazy. And you know what? They might think that there's some trans women who can menstruate because some of them think that they have a period. Of course, that's crazy. They want to fight for women so bad. And then they call us menstruators. How very weird. How very weird. Speaking of someone had tweeted back at this because they say menstruation affects half the workforce. And someone was like, I guarantee you that periods affect the whole workforce. And I took that to mean when women PMS, it, negatively impacts the men. They know it, or, they have to deal with aggressive women, etc. Maybe it should be taboo to talk about your period at work. That's not why people come to work. And of course, there's lots of men there. Men don't really necessarily want to hear about it and talk about it and so on. Even when you grow up around it or whatever. Like my brother, he's outnumbered. There's 6 girls, 1 boy. He's had to hear a lot of things over the years. It doesn't mean that it's something that he wants to talk about or hear about, People get used to it's just part of life. It's an unfortunate, thing sometimes, inconvenient, minor painful, you know. But that don't mean you go to work and you're just like, oh, let's talk about our flow. Get on the same schedule. Like, just go do your work. And if you're ill and you can't do your work, you can have a conversation and maybe someone will be understanding, but so I had days like that, certainly. But menstruators, come on. Come on. Oh, Joe. But that's his administration. That's how they treat women. The last thing I wanted to mention is that a couple of days ago there was a big explosion in Rafah, and from an Israeli attack that took out some civilians, and it caused the death between 35 and 45 Palestinian refugees. And Israel was saying that the bomb that we dropped could not have possibly produced that kind of explosion. There's some kind of secondary explosion that ended up setting that off, etc. And people were like, Rafah's burning, and there was a lot of negative press about Israel and their attack. So anyway, CNN ended up doing an analysis, and they did come to agree with the IDF that the sort of bomb that they dropped could not have caused that kind of explosion on its own, that it did impact some other uh I'm trying to find the analysis suggests that what the Israeli defense officials have so far suggested is likely true, which is that Hamas munitions, which were hidden roughly halfway between the compound and camp where the detonated by shrapnel from the airstrike, caused explosion of multiple fuel tanks at the refugee camp and the eventual fire. So, people are not purposely killing civilians. At least Israel isn't. And a lot of people don't believe that. You can believe the terrorist, I guess. Who did purposely go in and kill civilians and do awful things, will sexually assault them, holding hostages, American hostages, hostages from all over. If you want to trust their numbers and their word, I'm not saying you have to trust Israel, but certainly don't trust Hamas. So someone the other day, I posted a video because someone was like, Jesus was Palestinian because he was born in Bethlehem. And where's Bethlehem? And it's in Palestine. And I'm like, what kind of logic is that? And anyway, I addressed them in some of their comments, and so it was on TikTok, but I posted it on YouTube, and someone said it doesn't change. They went on a rant about the Jews, like they killed Christ, and well, they say Christ, they said Jesus. I don't know if this person was an atheist or a Muslim or whatever, but they went on a rant like you're for these people, or I guess it could have been I guess it could have been anybody. I was going to say it could have been a neo-Nazi kind of person, but I don't know, just maybe somebody who's just had it with Israel. But they said you support these people, blah 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 blah. And the video I posted just dealt with that comment about Jesus being Palestinian, but so I don't know if they looked at other sort of content or not. But it's kind of like, who should I side with the people who chant death to America? Is that who I should side for? People don't share my values and believe in democracy and all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't understand. Who should I side with? Who should I side with? Who should I side with? I can side with no one. But I would side with no one before I would side with Hamas. I don't think you should be able to do all the things that happened on October the 7th, and people come back and say, you know what, we really need that two-state solution. To what? To encourage more madness? If it was up to me, I would say no. I'd be a lot more gangster about this than Israel would be. And the US would be a lot more gangster about this than Israel is. They just, people put really crazy standards on them that they wouldn't apply to everyone else. But I just I'd be more gangster. I'd be like, no, we ain't doing no two. Like, y'all attacked us. We defended our land. It's ours. Get over it. Like, I wouldn't. You don't have a religious claim. Okay, well, y'all jumped us. You tried to take the land. You lost, war, etc. But it's ours, and we can hold it, and we can keep it, and we will fight for it. So you can try something, and we'll strike you down. But it's ours. You can either get with the program or go somewhere else. That's how I would be about it. That's how I would be about it. Anyway. Anyway. Thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website because it does cost to stream and run my site and everything else like that. So if you can support, I appreciate it. You guys can also check out different merch that's available on the site as well. And you guys can also check out some of my books that I've written. I have a new book that's coming up. It's a sequel to my book, The Dark Mermaid. So you guys can, if you haven't read that, you can check out The Dark Mermaid. And on June 10th, on my birthday, actually, when my new book releases, you guys can go ahead and pick that book up as well. So I encourage you to do that, to check out my stuff. I have 18 books all together. So you guys can find that at blacktnews.com if you go to the merchandise page, or there's a link right in the description of this video. All right, God bless you guys.